Yeah, you're welcome along. Football Show. Joe Molloy with you this evening. Later on, Joseph N'Doh is going to talk to us about the Africa Cup of Nations. In the meantime, very happy to bring in, because it has been a big day in Irish football for the FAI, Dion Fanning, Associate Editor at The Currency. Dion, great to have you with us.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
Very well. So two things broadly happening today. One, Ireland not going for the World Cup 2030, but very much part of the bid for the Euros of 2028. That was this morning's big conversation. And just in the last couple of hours this evening, the FAI have launched a strategy plan 2022 to 2025 on their own YouTube channel, and they've put a report into the public domain as well. So it's been a big old day. We might start with the Euro 2028 bid. So they have parked the 2030 plan. I seem to remember reading in various places mid last year, that the 2030 World Cup bid was never going to win. There was a general acceptance and understanding that it would not be heading the way of Ireland and the UK, and that 2028 was very much a realistic possibility if the bid could turn its attention that way. And it seems that's where we are. Yeah,
that was the feeling in all quarters, I think, when the 2030 project was floated, and the 2028, for lots of reasons, seems to be much more possible and much more likely. It doesn't stop it being seen by many people as a kind of an expensive waste of time, and that there are far more important issues in Irish football to deal with than getting a major tournament to the country. I'm not so sure that they're it's an either or, really. Like I think there's, and it's an interesting thing, and it actually does feed in a little bit into the strategy document. We will come back to that, but there are a number of different. I think there are a number of different football communities in Ireland, as we all know, and they aren't necessarily all they're not necessarily always overlapping, and there's a huge amount of participation. There's a huge amount of interest in the Irish national team, and then there is a devoted but under developed domestic league, and ignored and badly marketed, but the domestic league. And somehow there has to be a way of actually trying to do things that engages all of those people. Ideally, it happens through a really vibrant domestic league that everybody who watches and is engaged by football in this country is engaged by. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the idea of having a major tournament here. I thought it was one of the great blows, and I know we don't want to talk about COVID anymore, but one of the great blows of the COVID time was when the Euro matches were taken away, and people seem to think, oh, it doesn't really matter now. But I honestly felt it was even more, just because Ireland weren't in it. Actually, it would have been some kind of something to look forward to during the dark months, to have those matches, and they would have meant something. And I think they are a kind of a thing that people would enjoy. Whether that's enough of a reason to have them, whether it justifies the cost, is another thing. But the idea of it being something that we should just dismiss out of hand, I feel isn't necessarily the way to go either.
Yeah, I'm very open to the discussion. I think generally there's a fairly hardened scepticism towards these kind of ventures because, well, in particular in football in this country, we've been so underserved for so long that there is a sense this can't be the priority, hosting Euro 2028 games to line the coffers of UEFA. And also there's a scepticism, I suppose, that for the Jonathan Hills of the world and those up the corporate ladder and the various corporate ladders, and include, say, politicians, this is just a nice thing to have on their CV. Look what I did. I brought a Europa League final to Dublin. I brought Euro 2028 matches to Dublin, and that would suggest I'm doing my job well. And again, there's a scepticism over that. I suppose what leaves me open to the discussion more so than other ventures is it doesn't seem at first glance that this will cost a huge amount of money. If we're talking Croke Park and we're talking the Aviva Stadium and a casement is already going to be redeveloped as is, we're not here embarking on a crazy plan to build white elephant stadiums or spend a huge amount of money on infrastructure. It does look at first glance like Ireland would be able to host these matches without spending a fortune and without, wasting too much time thinking about it. Your point there about thinking of strategy and more important things. So it always gets vague with does it make money? Does it lose money? I mean, generally these things find a way of losing money despite the best plans and the best projections. But this doesn't seem like total, complete and utter waste and hollow to the core. It seems like it's a bit more manageable.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. It's not a desperate money pit. That as you say, most of it is done, and that is the way. A lot of, and you look at the Euros. That's the way. Look at how the last Euros was initially modelled across Europe for reasons such as that as well, because the idea of actually one country shouldering the entire burden seemed too much for them. And I think there doesn't seem to be, it isn't a huge, there will be costs, there will be more costs than whatever people budget for or claim it can be done. And the expectation and the idea, like we saw this around the America's Cup, where people throw out ridiculous figures about what this will bring to to a country or to an area, and you would see the same for any tournament. But there would be that isn't really the key thing. It is something. It's something probably a bit more intangible. I also, and when it comes to the America's Cup, I was glad to see that the Euros was referred to the third biggest sporting event in the world, because people tried to claim that for the America's Cup, the biggest scandal of the lot of that whole issue was to claim that was the third biggest sporting event in the world.
Is there any talk that Dublin might get the final, or does Wembley feel things went so well last year?
I think, well, it seems to be, the FA seem to be confident enough that they've got past that they can. I
bet they do.
But it's. I think they would be looking. And it would be interesting, like how it is broken down, because I take your point about the stadiums that are going to be used, but equally you would like to think that if it is Five Nations, that there is some attempt to kind of vary it a bit more than getting three matches and a quarter final or something like that. Yeah. It needs to, but that could be the way it goes, with it being very, very, very heavily skewed towards England. But I also think, Joe, like, your point is interesting, and again, it does feed back into the strategy. Like, it is interesting. Like, there is completely justifiably such a hardened skepticism about football administration in this country, and it is looking at the various things today, from the announcement this morning to the strategy document, and looking at some reaction and my own reaction and everything, and it's hardwired in all of us really to be incredibly skeptical and kind of dismissive of everything that the FAI kind of puts their name to. And this does predate, the dysfunctional body, the other dysfunctional bodies called the Galacticos, and the perpetually exploding clown car, and all these phrases that were used by the FAI. They predate John Delaney. This is the thing. Like, there is no. The last few years have been really, really terrible for the FAI, but the reputational damage to the FAI is almost as long as the association itself. And it is interesting to see, they're talking about changing the logo and things like that. But a rebranding of the whole association is probably no harm. Like that. There are certain aspects of that strategy where I'm looking at it thinking, you could probably, there are a lot of areas where you think it could be more adventurous, and that is possibly one of them, because It did strike me again today just how tarnished it is, and how long the road is going to be back, or not back even, because there's nowhere back. This is the point. Like there's no back. There's no golden age for the FAI. There's nothing really they can hark back to. So it does need a complete reinvention.
Well, let's move to the strategy launch then this evening. So this was done on the FAI's YouTube channel, and the strategy document is out there for everybody to read. It's very professionally done. It's very shiny. I had a chance to read some of it this evening, but not all of it in its entirety. And you may have had a chance to look at the launch on the YouTube channel, just to give people a sense of the tone, I suppose, of that launch this evening. Here is a clip of the FAI CEO, Jonathan Hill, just talking about the strategy in broad terms.
And this isn't just about the next 1 year or the next 4 years. To a degree, this is setting us up for success for the next 100 years as well. We're incredibly excited about that prospect. And look, having said what I said earlier in relation to consulting with all of those various people across the Irish football community, be they volunteers, be they administrators, be they referees, the most important thing in this strategy is that we are looking to improve the lot of our players. This is about playing football, the simple joy of playing football, and we hope that this strategy gives us a roadmap and a vision to be able to achieve the best that we can for all of our players within Ireland.
We'll get into some of the detail here. The future of the women's game is a big part of this report. So here's Hill talking about the vision for the women's game.
Our women's game has never been stronger. Katie McCabe and her teammates are an inspiration to every girl in Ireland and deserve every accolade that has come their way in recent times. While our Women's National League is growing and growing in stature and quality. As a board and an association, we are working very hard to ensure that inspiration is matched off the field. And to achieve that, amongst other things, we must develop and deliver programmes, both in clubs and schools in particular, to attract young girls to our game, and work with all involved to ensure we retain those young players and offer them the best opportunities to develop their skills, which in turn will grow participation levels across both girls and women's football.
So that's a sense of Jonathan Hill this evening. Dion, just for people who haven't obviously seen the report or the YouTube launch, I'm just going to list off some of the headline aims and targets which caught me, and then by all means, if I leave anything out, jump in with what grabbed you. So you mentioned there's going to be a new logo, new identity, not entirely sure what that means, new values. In terms of the men's senior team, the big initial aim over the next 3 years is qualification for Euro 2024. For the senior women's team, they're to make the World Cup in 23 or the Euros in 25. They want both men's and women's teams, seniors teams, ranked in the top 30, and they want underage teams in the top 20. Another aim is to secure a primary sponsor for the men's team. A lot of talk about the League of Ireland. So a new brand identity is what they say for the League of Ireland by 2023. Again, the details of which, hard to know what they mean by that. But they do promise an audit of facilities with infrastructure plan to start next year. They also want the League of Ireland ranked in the top 30 leagues in the UEFA coefficient. It's currently at 40. That would be a big jump. They're going to bring in a third tier for the Men's League of Ireland in 2023 and a second tier for the Women's National League in 2025. They want to bring a Europa League final to Dublin in 2024. And then to elaborate on some of the themes for the women's game, there's a lot of 75s in here. I don't know, is that a deliberate thing or not? They want 75% attendance minimum for the senior international team. They want 750,000 people watching the women's senior team on television, and they want 750 clubs nationwide to offer football to girls and women. So currently, instead of 750, there are 530 clubs in that position. And I suppose in participation rates, they're looking to have 300,000 registered players by the end of 2025. That would mean an increase of 50,000 female players and an increase of 28,000 male players. So currently we have 22,600 female players registered. They want to up that to over 75,000. And they're just some of the aims which jumped out. Now, how they're going to do all that, we can talk about in a second. But did they jump? That kind of covers the report, I would think, unless I'm missing anything.
No, I think it's like a lot of these things, like I was looking back at the 2016 strategy document last week, and again, clearly there's a difference in tone between John Delaney and Jonathan Hill. But again, even with that, there are like lots of similarities in certain of the vague, abstract aspirations. Like Jonathan Hill said we can bring football together like no other sport. Like that was one of the great themes of Delaney, who went into that 2016 strategy document talking about football being the people's sport. And but Delaney, of course, went further. He did actually compare. Said it was great that it was. He compared. I think it's great that I was looking to get this right. It's great that 100 years since 1916 that we'll hopefully have new sporting heroes 100 years later. So he linked the men and women of 1916 to the Irish football team going to the European Championships, which was something Jonathan Hill wouldn't try and do. But the general abstractions are kind of the same, but again coming from a very low base because of what the FAI has been through. And there are a lot of things that jumped out. I think there are, again, like, I watched most of it, Joe, and it's painful enough watching. Like it isn't something that you would really sit down and say this is an entertaining watch.
Is it Jonathan Hill just at a screen, or?
He was introduced by Cathal Dervan. He's at a podium, and then there was a little discussion with Roy Barrett and Paul Cook, and then Jonathan Hill again joining in, and it was all fine. It's just not particularly exciting, and Jonathan Hill isn't an exciting communicator. But does any of that matter? Like this is the thing. Again, there's an instinctive response, and I include myself in this, to have a kind of eye roll at whatever the FAI are trying to do, and that is hardwired into us for very good reasons. But I don't remember ever being blown away by anything Philip Brown has ever said. Or like being sort of taken on a voyage by the rhetoric of Philip Brown. It's not really in the skill set of a sports administrator, really, and it shouldn't be. But for some reason the FAI has this, and again, a lot of this does predate John Delaney, but John Delaney took it to new levels. It does have this sense where we look upon it as for good reasons, it has been this object of ridicule, and that is a huge thing for them to overcome as they go forward. But I think so. The point I'm getting to with this is that actually, as I kind of found myself sitting through this and going, is this any good? I then kind of felt sort of a bit more charitable towards the FAI. In terms of what are they trying to do? They can't come at this from this point where they are with really huge ambitions. Like they really can't. You mentioned one of them there. Like one of their goals is to get a sponsor for the men's team in 2022.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary that hasn't happened. Like it is really extraordinary that you have this incredibly incredibly sponsorable, exciting, dynamic, young, vibrant senior men's team, and it's still without a sponsor. Like that is extraordinary. So like that is something, and you look at their KPI for how we will measure our progress for that is primary partner, secure a new primary partner for our men's national team, key performance indicator, new partner to be secured in 2022. So like that is very there. Like yeah, but it's and that is kind of one of the clearest statements. A lot of them, as you say, there's, it's vague in terms of, and it's very much in corporate speak in terms of what they, going to do. Like, there's, with the League of Ireland, it's kind of, support the League of Ireland in terms of doing well, support League of Ireland clubs in terms of doing well in Europe. And it doesn't really get into the detail of that. But I think beyond that, there are certain aspects that I found interesting, like the idea, and it's in the document, and Jonathan Hill said it in his address as well, as like work with all our stakeholders to develop a football industry in Ireland. And there's talk in the full plan. It is, work with clubs to create a talented, engaged, skilled, and experienced full-time workforce in both business and football positions, including players, as we work towards creating a full-time football industry.
Yeah.
Now that is actually kind of a huge ambition for where Irish football is at the moment.
And sorry to interrupt on that, because that is so crucial. Again, on my scanning of the document this evening, there was too much vagueness on that front, because we're at a precipice here of having to develop our own talent for the first time ever. Really, we have no industry on that front. And so it seems Jonathan Hill and the FAI are certainly against a Lilleshall type setup or a residential academy which would oversee the development of the best however many players in the country. That it does seem to be very much wedded to handing that over to the League of Ireland clubs. And again, there are just so many question marks there over the capabilities of various League of Ireland clubs to follow through on that, on the number of coaches. There's a mention of certified academies or coaching accreditation, but again, it's vague. And just to give people a sense of the acrimony on the ground, because it is all very well in a document to talk about stakeholders coming together and holding hands and being best friends. Dan McDonald pointed out in his piece in the Irish Independent that just the past week, because this has been going on for a while, this business of, well, the national leagues at underage level are going to develop the talent and that's the best way to do it, and we're sure of that. But this conversation has been going on for years at this stage. And just this week, to quote Dan, the FAI board's decision to delay the start of the Under-14 National League until the summers caused consternation in every quarter. League of Ireland clubs had already agreed in principle to take players from their schoolboy teams, and the majority of those players have gone through with their moves anyway, meaning that the schoolboy sphere is furious and nobody is satisfied. SFAI Honorary Secretary Martin O'Hanlon resigned last week, citing this episode. So for all the talk of aspiration, years into this situation, we have a bunch of 13, 14-year-olds who've made the decision to go to League of Ireland clubs, left their mates on the other team, and now there's no National League for them right through until the summer. And needless to say, the schoolboy teams are furious. Probably got a bunch of 13-year-olds saying, what the hell's going on here? Where are the adults in the room? Meanwhile, yeah, fair enough, we've launched our document this evening to say we're all going to work together, and that's the hope. But reality on the ground constantly seems to be different. That's one of the reasons for scepticism generally, but in particular on this issue. This sets the agenda for the next 20 years of men's senior football. And look, I think we're all
But is there
very
any
nervous.
document, Joe, is there any document, like that decision is baffling. Like there's no way you can justify that in terms of what the FAI said they were trying to do, the manner in which it was done. The whole thing is just it's just illogical. It's really illogical, even by the standards of FAI. Illogical decisions. It was, it's up there. It's really up there again in the top 5 illogical FAI decisions. Like there's nothing you can do about that. You can say otherwise about that. And I take the point. Like when you have that still happening. Like what does it say about it?
Yeah,
but you see, there is another
reality
point there.
versus the shiny document.
Yeah, but the reality is, I know, I understand that. I don't like. How would you, if you were like the reality in Irish football is always very, very messy. Like it is this extraordinary. Like somebody described it to me last week as like it's a nest of vipers, and I think that has always been the case. Again, the under 14s and that the delay of the season, I mean, that doesn't really, like, people getting worked up about that. It's entirely legitimate. But no matter what decisions are made in Irish football, there is always warring.
Yeah.
There are warring groups and lobbies, and it has been like that forever. It has really been like that forever. And I was struck by, and I'm struck by a comment actually John Hill made on Twitter this evening when somebody pointed out that the KPI for the League of Ireland shouldn't be. I think their KPI is sold out men's FAI Cup final by 2025, and somebody said it should be to grow. It should actually be 20% growth in gates.
Yeah. Which
actually would be that seems to be a much more, that would really be a much more tangible sign of improvement in the League of Ireland or growth. And Hill has just replied saying it's a very fair challenge and one we can address and integrate into specific League of Ireland WNL plans. Of course, this needs to be a shared objective with the clubs, and the Health makes the point that in so many of the areas, the strategy can only succeed where the approach is collaborative. So, given the history of Irish football, you could say that any strategy that is based on the idea that it can only succeed if it's collaborative is doomed to fail the minute it's launched. Because collaboration and cooperation have never really been at the heart of an awful lot of things in terms of Irish football. It's always been political. It has, under the time of John Delaney, it was the politics was ramped up by John Delaney. He thrived on it, but it has always been that. So, like, this is the problem. This is going back to your point. Like, there is not just on the issue of the under 14 league, but on so many issues, there is nothing really that a strategy document can do to solve a number of the problems.
Sure, yeah. Where you might be most hopeful and most charitable is the aspirations for participation, and like that shouldn't be discounted, the effect that can have on everybody's lives. And they note in the document there are 80,000 volunteers in football in this country. It's a wonderful thing. I grew up playing football and it enriched my life massively, and there's so many great people there, and God, people love their football. If we can get 750 clubs offering football to girls and women as opposed to 530 within 3 years, if we can add 50,000 female players, add 30,000 male players, these are very significant things as well. And I thought, well, great. I mean, I'd love to see how they're going to do it, but I think it's a great aspiration. And what really catches my eye is the audit of League of Ireland facilities with an infrastructure plan starting next year. Now, step one to gate receipts going up 20% across the board is an improvement in facilities, I think. I think the football is of a sufficient quality that people can go along and watch lots of good players playing good football. I think facilities can put lots off. So now where the money's coming from, how all that's working, I don't really know, but these are some of the aspirations which I think, accepting the certain skepticism we have for many good reasons, these are things that I'm very encouraged by.
Yeah, I think that they are encouraging, and again there is, like, this comes back to the many different aspects of football in this country, that there is a huge appetite for it.
Yeah.
There's a huge participation in it, and how that then can be translated into creating a more vibrant, really getting the League of Ireland getting the support its supporters feel it deserves, growing it, doing all those things, is how you join it all up is the thing. Because I think it's unfair even on Irish supporters get called, bar stoolers or event junkies or whatever, all this kind of stuff. And again, there is this tendency to blame the supporter, the spectator, for not going to see the things you feel they should be going to see. No one in any walk of life survives by blaming the person they want to kind of, the customer, if you like, for not buying their product. But there is a way to that through the participation and getting that right. And again, Look, Joe, we go back to the same stuff, and this is why I actually do feel a little bit of kind of feeling charitable towards the FAI in some ways, because, you know, so much went wrong during the 10 years, the 10 years to 2019, and going back to the Vantage Club and going back to what clubs and what football clubs in Ireland were asked to do to make up for that gap in the finances and the money, where the money went. And, you know, we know all the stories. Yeah. And where and how, you know, and that took money from the things that we're talking about in terms of participation, coaches, all that kind of stuff, which is central to it. And if they feel that maybe there's an idea that there's a quick fix somehow, to go back to what we're talking about, like by bringing in Euro 28 or something like that, you actually have a quick fix in terms of galvanizing a country around something. But like, ideally, this is the stuff that changes, and it changes slowly, but it does need money, and it really does need. And I think, like, if I was somebody coming into the FAI today, I'd be saying two things. I'd be saying rebrand it entirely, change the name of it so that it's harder for people, you know, wedded to cliches like myself, to just come back in and refer to all the old lines about the FAI. Change it completely, and also then look at this team, look at what you have, look at the excitement around the Irish men's team now, and think this is an opportunity to market everything in terms of what's coming through. Not just market the men's team, not just get a men's sponsor, but market the League of Ireland in terms of how these young players that you're going to see playing for Ireland for the next 10 years, that this is where you see them. To turn it into this, to just link all that vibrancy together. And then you could actually capture the appetite of the people who are out there desperate, I think, actually, for, you know, to really engage with football in this country.
Dion, great stuff. Great to have you on. Just out of time. Thanks a million. Dion Fanning there, Associate Editor at The Currency. We'll take a short break. And our football coverage is with thanks to Sky. Ironically, don't miss Burnley Man United on Tuesday night live on BT Sport, which is obviously, again, a huge part of football in this country as well.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
Avant Money One credit card. One with flexibility and control.